Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. Now, what is a servant for the afterlife doing in an Egyptian tomb? The title to today's program is Ahead of Their Time. We're going to talk about the pharaohs and the civilizations of ancient Egypt that have reached literally into the mindset of this very hour. Before me are actual instruments used in surgery and other enterprises which require a delicacy and acumen that is known only to the civilized generations today and the past. So we're going to have a good time on the program, and one of my dear friends has come to be with us as a guest again, Dr. Dennis Swift, cryptozoologist.
Carl,
Dennis,
it's great to be with you.
You know, when you're on the program, I don't know how people know you're going to be on. You said your family watched, my family watches sometime, but literally the ratings go up because you bring such incredible information, photographically and in actual documentation of instruments that you're going to talk to us about. Now, talking about being ahead of their time, we're going to talk about the pharaohs of Egypt and the civilization of antiquity that was superior, right?
Surprisingly, in some aspects, the ancient Egyptians surpassed us in some levels of technology. Of course, in other areas, they were primitive, but there's an amazing amount of information and artifacts that proves irrefutably that they had a high-tech civilization.
Now, this audience is really going to appreciate that information you're going to share with us. And the point that we want to make is that those people, even though they were in many respects primitive and isolated, but then they conquered their part of the world, those peoples were closer to creation, thus had an ability to conceptualize and to add certain numbers and characteristics that have benefited all of us, and a civilization that to some degree we copy to this very hour because they were closer to creation. So the fact that you're going to show that the pharaohs and their civilizations in many respects were superior speaks of creation rather than evolutionary development of man.
That's right, Carl.
We're going to have a good time today.
And it's going to be an eye-opening, information, fact-filled session.
Well, let's get right to it.
Let's start with the pyramids. The sheer splendor and unrivaled grandeur and unsurpassed majesty of the pyramids evokes awe and wonder. To see them rising up out of the desert and towering over the Giza Plateau invites investigation and mystery. To study these relics of the past leaves one in a life of a legacy of riddles, but they are proof positive of an ancient, advanced, high-tech civilization that is a pedestal-smashing blow to evolution. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that the Great Pyramids are the greatest buildings ever built, that we cannot duplicate them or replicate them or even attempt to accomplish what they accomplished. The largest pyramid towers 48 stories high over the Giza Plateau.
In fact, I have personally climbed. We have Khephren, Cheops, and Mykerinos and pyramids, and I've personally climbed to the top of Cheops Pyramid. Continue.
Well, you know, there's a sort of chronological snobbery among modern men, a modern conceit that we are bionic-brained and we are so much more advanced and geniuses in comparison to the ancient people, and that they were mental morons. But this, again, is proof positive of an advanced civilization. The largest pyramid consists of 2,600,000 plus limestone blocks, each weighing 2.5 tons.
Tons, yes.
Some of them are 30 tons, 60 tons, even 200-ton stones over 200 feet high in the air.
And yet placed with a precision where often you can't get a razor blade between those blocks.
There is a mathematical precision and a technological expertise. The Great Pyramid is on 13 acres. You could put 874 wide-bodied, jumbo-sized jets on the inside of it with plenty of space to spare.
Astounding.
But not only that, it once was covered with casing stones.
Yes.
Highly polished limestone blocks, polished to the consistency of an optical contact lens. And 0.000, less than 1/100th of an inch in between the spaces. And even after generations of destruction and earthquakes, there's still many of the casing stones at the lower level. You cannot slip a razor blade in between.
This is absolutely astounding. And again, we can't repeat this today.
Well, it was in the 1970s when we could lift the first 200-ton stone. It took 6 weeks to put up the equipment. It was a static operation. And there are stones that weigh 200 tons near the top of the pyramid. That's the equivalent of 500 family-sized automobiles. Today we have cranes that can lift up to 1,000 tons. But at Baalbek, Lebanon, they made stones 1,000 tons and moved them.
Yes, now, I have visited that site. Not only were these people ahead of their time, they're ahead of our time in many respects.
Yes, we could lay it out on paper. But we could not put it out in a mathematical precision footprint. It's 716 feet on each corner of the Great Pyramid, and it's only 1/16th of an inch off on one corner. There's no way that we could accomplish that using today's equipment or materials. You know, Nova did a special on how you could build the pyramids using copper chisels and all that. Well, they failed miserably, especially when they tried to get to the top. They built a small pyramid, 1-ton stones, using rollers and everything, but the larger stones would crush the rollers, and it would take a ramp over a mile long to get to the top. That's 48 plus stories. The weight of the ramp would collapse under the colossal amount of these cyclopean stones, these colossal megalithic stones. Now, think about this. I'm committed to the return of common sense. If they use people with ropes pulling up these huge stones, as you get to the top, the higher you get to the top, the guys with the ropes would be falling over the other side. You couldn't put the casing stone on the top. So they didn't do it with a ramp. In fact, the Nova Special and the Japanese archaeological team that tried to duplicate the feat, even putting a 1-ton stone 30 feet off the ground with a ramp, they could not do it.
So, do you know how they did it?
Nobody knows for sure how they did it. They had to have some understanding of the astronomical alignment of the stars and gravity and the magnetic lines of the Earth. There was a little Latvian guy who weighed no more than 110 pounds who lived in Florida and built the Coral Ridge Castle out of limestone blocks. And the largest is 60 tons. He never weighed more than 110 pounds. He moved them without any equipment. And he said he discovered the secret of the ancient Egyptians, but he died in 1952, and he never told anybody how he did it. One of the stones is 60 tons. It's perfectly round. You could touch it with your finger, and it revolved as a door, around and around. And it had something to do with the magnetic poles of the Earth and the astronomical alignments.
They were ahead of their time and ours.
You know, the first pyramids were the best built. Then it de-evolved.
Yes.
After that, they went down in expertise.
Like man.
But there's even some mysteries surrounding the Sphinx. Because what we find here on the Sphinx, these are not wind and sand erosions.
Correct.
It's water erosion. So sometime about 5,000 years ago or less, this was a subtropical Sahara paradise. And there was torrential downpours of water. If there was a worldwide flood, then all deserts would have formed about 4,600 years ago. And that fits the facts.
Yes,
that at one time there was more water here.
Yes.
When it was built, we don't know. Another megalithic mystery is these statues that are made out of diorite. No sculpture today would even attempt to carve a statue out of diorite. These statues, diorite, we use to cut diamonds. Yes.